Hello my dear friends, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring one of the darkest and most shocking stories hidden inside history, the story of the Rothschild family. Let's get started. For more than 2 centuries, the name Rothschild has been surrounded by mystery, fear, admiration, and endless conspiracy theories. Some people believed the family secretly controlled Europe from behind the scenes. Others claimed they manipulated wars, governments, and even the global financial system itself. Their influence became so legendary that entire books, political movements, and conspiracy theories were built around one question. How powerful was the Rothschild family really? At the height of their empire, kings borrowed money from them. Governments depended on them. Entire nations trusted Rothschild banks during moments of war and economic collapse. Their financial network stretched across Europe with a level of speed and secrecy almost unimaginable at the time. Long before the internet, telephones, or modern banking systems existed, the Rothschild family created something extraordinary, an international financial empire connected by blood, loyalty, and information. And perhaps that is what frightened people most. Because while ordinary citizens trusted kings and governments, the Rothschilds quietly built influence that seemed to rise above national borders themselves. They were not rulers in the traditional sense. They did not wear crowns or command armies directly. Yet their money financed wars, stabilized economies, and shaped political decisions throughout Europe. But the story did not begin in luxury or power. It began inside one of the poorest and most restricted places in 18th-century Germany. The founder of the dynasty, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, was born in 1744 in Frankfurt, inside a cramped Jewish ghetto known as Judengasse. At the time, Jewish families across much of Europe faced severe discrimination and restrictions. They were often separated from broader society, limited in business opportunities, and forced to survive under difficult conditions. The Rothschild family lived modestly. Their home stood beneath a red shield hanging outside the building, which eventually inspired the family name, Rothschild, meaning red shield. Mayer grew up surrounded by crowded streets, financial struggle, and social barriers that prevented many Jewish families from rising into positions of power. But from an early age, Mayer understood something critical. Money could move across borders more freely than people could. While political systems constantly changed, trade and finance continued connecting nations together. Mayer became fascinated by coins, currencies, and commerce. He studied financial systems carefully and learned how wealth flowed through Europe. Most importantly, he recognized that information itself was a form of power. And Mayer Rothschild was exceptionally intelligent. As a young man, he entered the business of coin dealing and financial trading. At first, his work appeared small and unremarkable. But Mayer possessed extraordinary patience and strategic thinking. He slowly built relationships with wealthy clients, noble families, and regional rulers who required financial services. One connection changed everything. Mayer gained the trust of Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse, one of the wealthiest men in Europe at the time. Through careful service and financial reliability, Mayer positioned himself close to enormous aristocratic wealth. While many merchants remained trapped in local trade, Rothschild moved closer to elite financial circles operating across nations. And he began thinking much bigger than anyone realized. Most bankers during that period focused on single cities or local markets. Mayer imagined something entirely different, an international family banking network operating across Europe itself. Instead of trusting outsiders, he would build a financial empire using his own sons. It was a revolutionary idea. Mayer had 5 sons, and he strategically sent each one to a major European financial center. Nathan Rothschild went to London. James Rothschild moved to Paris. Salomon settled in Vienna. Karl established operations in Naples. Amschel remained in Frankfurt. Together, They created one of the first truly international banking dynasties in modern history. The system gave the Rothschild family extraordinary advantages. Because the brothers trusted each other completely, information could travel through the private family network faster and more securely than through traditional government channels. In an age where communication was painfully slow, this speed became enormously valuable. And soon, Europe noticed. As wars, revolutions, and political instability spread across the continent during the late 18th and early 19th centuries, governments desperately needed reliable financing. Armies required money, kings required loans, trade required stability. The Rothschilds quietly positioned themselves at the center of this growing financial chaos. And they thrived inside it. The Napoleonic Wars transformed Europe into a battlefield. Empires collapsed. Alliances shifted constantly. Economies suffered enormous pressure. Yet during this instability, the Rothschild network expanded rapidly because governments increasingly depended on experienced international bankers capable of moving money across dangerous borders. The family became masters of financial logistics. They transferred massive amounts of gold and currency across Europe under conditions most businesses could barely survive. Their network allowed them to finance governments, support military operations, and manage enormous financial transactions faster than many national institutions themselves. And their reputation grew almost mythical. By the early 19th century, the Rothschild family had become one of the wealthiest and most influential banking dynasties in Europe. Their connections reached royal families, political leaders, industrialists, and financial institutions across multiple countries. Some people admired them as brilliant financial innovators. Others feared the sheer scale of their influence. And secrecy surrounded everything they did. The Rothschilds operated with extreme privacy. Family loyalty remained central to their empire. Marriages often occurred within elite circles to preserve wealth and control. Business information stayed carefully protected. Unlike politicians who needed public attention, the Rothschild family often preferred quiet influence behind closed doors. That secrecy fueled endless rumors. Ordinary people rarely understood how large financial systems actually operated, especially during times of war and economic instability. As the Rothschilds became richer and more influential, many Europeans started imagining hidden power behind the scenes. Stories spread claiming the family knew political secrets before governments themselves. Some even believed the Rothschilds could influence wars through financial pressure alone. And one event intensified those rumors more than almost anything else. The Battle of Waterloo. In 1815, Europe watched anxiously as Napoleon Bonaparte faced defeat against British-led forces under the Duke of Wellington. The outcome would shape the future of Europe itself. According to one of the most famous legends surrounding the Rothschild family, Nathan Rothschild in London supposedly received news of Napoleon's defeat before the British government officially announced it. Then came the conspiracy. The story claimed Nathan Rothschild secretly used this information to manipulate financial markets, causing panic before buying enormous amounts of government bonds at low prices. When the victory became public knowledge, the value skyrocketed, making the family incredibly wealthy almost overnight. Historians still debate how much of this story is true, exaggerated, or completely fictional. But the fact that millions of people believed it reveals something extremely important: the Rothschild family had already become symbols of hidden financial power. Whether every rumor was accurate no longer mattered. The family's influence appeared so large that people naturally assumed they must secretly control events behind the scenes. And perhaps that perception became one of the most powerful parts of the Rothschild legacy itself. Because by the middle of the 19th century, the Rothschild empire stood at the center of European finance. Governments borrowed from them. Railroads depended on their investments. International trade relied on banking systems connected to their network. Few families in history had ever accumulated so much cross-border financial influence. But enormous wealth also created enormous suspicion. Political radicals, conspiracy theorists, and anti-Semitic movements increasingly targeted the Rothschild family as symbols of hidden global control. Some accusations were based on fear of banking power. Others were fueled by prejudice and dangerous misinformation. Over time, countless exaggerated and false conspiracy theories attached themselves to the Rothschild name. Yet beneath the myths and rumors, one undeniable truth remained. The Rothschild family really had helped transform international finance forever. They proved that information, communication, and financial networks could create influence greater than traditional political borders. Long before globalization became a modern concept, the Rothschilds had already built a system connecting Europe through money itself. And their empire was still growing. Because while kings ruled nations publicly, the Rothschild family was quietly learning how to influence the systems operating underneath them all. By the 19th century, the Rothschild family had become something almost unprecedented in European history. Kings ruled nations, generals commanded armies, politicians passed laws, but behind many of those systems stood the invisible power of money, and increasingly, the Rothschilds controlled enormous portions of it. Their banking empire stretched across Europe through private family networks operating faster and more efficiently than many governments themselves. And that level of influence made people deeply uncomfortable. The Rothschild brothers communicated constantly through private couriers, coded letters, and trusted agents moving across borders. At a time when information could take days or even weeks to travel between cities, the family created an international communication system that gave them extraordinary advantages in finance and politics. In many ways, they built the first modern financial intelligence network. They often knew about economic shifts, political tensions, and military developments before competitors or governments fully understood what was happening. In the world of banking, speed meant power. Whoever received information first could move money first. And whoever moved money first could shape markets before others even realized conditions had changed. The Rothschilds mastered that system better than almost anyone else. And naturally, rumors exploded everywhere. Some stories claimed the family possessed spies across Europe. Others insisted Rothschild couriers traveled faster than official government messengers. Certain politicians feared the family knew sensitive political developments before national leaders themselves. Whether exaggerated or not, the perception of hidden knowledge became central to the Rothschild legend. Then came Waterloo. Few moments in European history generated more fascination around the Rothschild family than the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Napoleon Bonaparte's defeat reshaped the future of Europe, and according to one of the most famous financial legends ever told, Nathan Rothschild received news of the battle's outcome before the British government officially announced it in London. What happened next became the subject of endless speculation. According to the popular version of the story, Nathan Rothschild secretly arrived at the London Stock Exchange after learning Napoleon had lost. Instead of celebrating publicly, he supposedly acted calm and pessimistic, causing other investors to panic and sell government bonds. As prices collapsed, Rothschild allegedly purchased enormous amounts of stock cheaply before the official victory announcement caused values to skyrocket again. The story spread across Europe like wildfire. For generations, people repeated the tale as proof that the Rothschild family secretly manipulated financial markets using hidden information. Historians later questioned many parts of the legend, and some details were likely exaggerated or distorted over time. But once again, something more important than factual precision was happening. The Rothschild family had become symbols of invisible financial control. People no longer viewed them simply as bankers. They viewed them as shadowy figures operating behind historical events themselves. And as Europe entered the modern industrial age, those suspicions only intensified. Because the family kept growing richer. The Rothschild banks financed railroads, infrastructure projects, governments, and industries across multiple countries. They became deeply involved in international loans and state finance. During periods of war or instability, rulers often depended on Rothschild banking networks to move money quickly and securely across borders. That dependence created enormous political influence. The family did not rule nations directly, but governments increasingly listened carefully to financial elites capable of stabilizing or destabilizing economies. In many ways, the Rothschilds represented the rise of a new kind of power in Europe, not power built through armies or royal bloodlines alone, but through international finance. And for ordinary people, that power felt mysterious and frightening. Throughout the 19th century, Europe experienced revolutions, economic crises, industrialization, and political instability. During uncertain times, people searched for explanations behind massive social changes they could not fully understand. Giant banking dynasties became easy targets for suspicion, especially because most citizens had little understanding of how international finance actually operated. The Rothschild name slowly transformed into something larger than a real family. It became a symbol. A symbol of wealth. A symbol of hidden influence. And eventually, a symbol used inside dangerous conspiracy theories. As the family's fame spread, so did anti-Semitic propaganda across Europe. Political extremists increasingly portrayed the Rothschilds as evidence of secret Jewish financial control over nations and governments. Many conspiracy theories attached to the family were not based on reality, but on fear, prejudice, and political manipulation. Some claims became completely absurd. People accused the Rothschilds of secretly controlling every war, every economy, and even entire governments from behind closed doors. Over time, the family became central figures in countless conspiracy theories that mixed genuine financial influence with fantasy, paranoia, and hatred. But separating truth from myth became extremely difficult. Because while many conspiracies were exaggerated or false, the Rothschilds truly were extraordinarily powerful bankers. Their wealth and international connections were real. Their influence over finance was real. Their relationships with governments and aristocrats were real. And that combination of real power mixed with mystery created endless speculation. The 20th century would challenge the family in ways previous generations could never have imagined. As Europe entered the era of world wars, revolutions, and collapsing empires, the Rothschild banking network faced enormous pressure. The world that had allowed their international dynasty to thrive was beginning to break apart. Monarchies disappeared, borders changed, economic systems collapsed under war and political extremism. And the family itself became increasingly vulnerable. During World War II, Nazi Germany targeted Jewish families across Europe, including branches of the Rothschild dynasty. Some family members escaped, others lost property, influence, or financial control as Europe descended into chaos. The same continent where the Rothschilds once helped finance kings and empires was now being consumed by destruction and hatred. The world after the wars looked completely different. Governments became stronger, central banking systems expanded, modern corporations replaced many old aristocratic financial structures. The age of giant family-controlled European banking dynasties slowly declined. The Rothschild Empire no longer dominated global finance the way it once had during the 19th century. Yet the family survived. Even after wars, political upheaval, and economic transformation, the Rothschild name remained connected to international finance, investment banking, and elite wealth. While their direct influence changed over time, the mystique surrounding the family never disappeared completely. And perhaps it never will. Because the Rothschild story touches something deeper than simple wealth. It reflects humanity's fascination with hidden power itself. People are naturally drawn toward the idea that secret forces operate behind governments, economies, and historical events. The Rothschild family became one of the ultimate symbols of that fear because their real influence was already extraordinary. No conspiracy theory was needed to make their story fascinating. A poor Jewish family from a restricted Frankfurt ghetto truly did build one of the most influential financial dynasties in history. They created international banking systems before modern globalization existed. They financed governments, supported infrastructure, and helped shape European finance during periods of enormous transformation. That alone was historic. But secrecy amplified everything. The family valued privacy intensely. They avoided unnecessary public exposure. Business operations stayed hidden behind layers of trust, private communication, and elite networks. In many ways, the Rothschilds understood an important truth long before modern billionaires did. Invisible power can sometimes be stronger than visible power. And that idea still unsettles people today. Because even in the modern world, massive financial institutions continue influencing governments, industries, and global markets behind the scenes. Wealth still creates access. Banking systems still shape political decisions. International finance still operates through networks most ordinary people barely understand. The world the Rothschild family helped build never truly disappeared. It evolved. Today, the name, Rothschild, still triggers fascination, suspicion, admiration, and controversy across the world. For some, the family represents financial genius and survival against enormous historical obstacles. For others, the name has become connected to myths and conspiracy theories far removed from reality. But perhaps the most important truth lies somewhere in between. The Rothschild family did not secretly control every government or manipulate every war from the shadows. Many extreme conspiracy theories surrounding them are false, exaggerated, or rooted in prejudice. Yet at the same time, dismissing their historical influence entirely would also ignore reality. Because for a period of European history, few families possessed greater financial reach or international influence than the Rothschilds. And that influence helped reshape the modern world. Their story reveals how money, information, and networks of trust can become forms of power just as important as armies or political office. Long before the digital age, the Rothschild family understood that whoever controlled the movement of money and information could quietly influence entire societies. Maybe that is why their legacy still feels so mysterious centuries later. The Rothschilds did not simply build banks. They helped build the modern architecture of international finance itself. And somewhere between the real history, the hidden influence, and the endless conspiracy theories, the legend of the Rothschild Empire was born. Thank you for joining me on today's journey into one of history's darkest hidden stories. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next mystery hidden inside history.